Dear Mr. and Mrs. Harrison, your surrogate, Ms. Zelda Vinson, is confirmed 4 weeks pregnant with your embryo. I read the line 3 times. The word swam on the screen, nonsensical. It had to be a mistake. A system glitch. I was at my desk, trying to untangle a plot point in my latest novel when the email chimed in. Life Tech Fertility. I'd almost deleted it, assuming it was a bill for our frozen embryo storage. Now the room was silent. My name is Celine, and I'm a 39-year-old novelist. My husband, Garrick, and I had been through the ringer with infertility. 5 failed IVF cycles. 5 tiny embryos, our last bits of hope, were frozen in a lab, waiting for a day we were brave enough to try again. I stared at the name on the screen. Miss Zelda Vinson. Not Zelda Smith. Not Zelda Rodriguez. Zelda Vinson? My Zelda? The woman I'd known since college. The woman who held my hand during every failed transfer. The woman I called my sister. My best friend. My blood didn't just run cold, it turned to ice. This wasn't a mistake. This was an impossibility. And yet there it was. A new, unimaginable reality that was already 4 weeks old. My first instinct wasn't to scream or cry. I didn't throw my laptop. A strange, cold calm settled over me. It was the same numb focus I got when a book was going badly, a detached part of my brain that just assessed the damage. But this wasn't a bad chapter. This was the end of the book. My hands moved on their own, clicking away from my email. I opened my online banking app. For 6 months, a small, dark voice in my head had told me something was wrong with Garrick. A sick, nagging feeling that had made me start watching our accounts. I'd even told myself I was paranoid, that grief was making me crazy. Now, I knew I hadn't been crazy enough. I clicked on our joint savings account. My eyes scanned the transaction list, past the mortgage payment, past the utility bills. And then I saw it. 2 days ago. A wire transfer for $50,000. My stomach hollowed out. I clicked the entry, my heart beating a slow, heavy drum against my ribs. The recipient, Zelda Vinson. The memo line was 3 words. 3 words that ended my life. Our future, G. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't an impulse. This was a plan. A transaction. They had bought my baby with my money. The coldness didn't leave. It sharpened into something hard and clear. I knew what I had to do. I had to know. I had to hear his voice. My hands were perfectly steady as I picked up my phone from the desk. I found Garrick in my contacts and pressed the call button. He answered on the 3rd ring, his voice breezy, disgustingly normal. Hey babe, what's up? I kept my own voice level, a perfect mask of the casual wife. The voice I use for book readings. Hey, you working late? He chuckled, a sound I'd once loved. Yeah, babe, swamped. Closing a big deal. I'll probably be home late, so don't wait up for me. He sounded so happy, so light, so completely, utterly, and terrifyingly free of guilt. The lie was as easy for him as breathing. Okay, I said, my voice smooth as glass. Don't work too hard. Love you. I ended the call before he could say it back, tossing the phone onto the stacks of paper on my desk. The silence in my office was absolute. This wasn't a marriage. This wasn't a betrayal. This was a war. And my quiet strength, the focus I used to build entire worlds from words, was now my armor. I didn't waste a single second on tears. The time for grief would come later. Right now, I needed a weapon. I turned back to my laptop, my focus absolute. I closed the banking app. I closed my email. I opened a different folder, one hidden deep in a cloud drive, protected by 3 layers of passwords. The folder was named Project G. It had nothing to do with IVF. It had nothing to do with babies, or friendships, or love. It was the product of the last 6 months, the result of that sick, nagging feeling I couldn't ignore. Inside were spreadsheets that tracked hidden expenses, scans of bank statements from accounts I wasn't supposed to know about. Registration documents for shell companies with fake addresses. I had discovered 6 months ago that Garrick, my charming, supportive husband, was a thief. He was systematically embezzling money from his firm. He thought I was just a novelist, lost in my fantasy worlds. He had no idea I was meticulous. He had no idea I saw everything. I had been building this case, terrified, unsure of what I would do with it. I thought that was the biggest betrayal I would ever face. Now I realized it was my gift. He hadn't just stolen my future. He had given me the tools to destroy his. My path was suddenly terribly clear. This was not a problem for a marriage counselor. This wasn't even a problem for a simple divorce lawyer. The scale of this betrayal was too big, too dark. I needed someone who understood the kind of evil I was facing. I opened my contacts and found the name. Anya. I had met her at a publishing event, a woman in a sharp suit who introduced herself as a corporate shark. Her eyes had been the most intelligent and ruthless I had ever seen. I called her. She answered on the second ring, her voice crisp and impatient. Anya speaking. I didn't waver. My voice was as cold and hard as my heart. Anya, it's Celine Harrison. I have 2 cases for you. First, I need to file a catastrophic negligence lawsuit against LifeTech Fertility. They gave my frozen embryo to my best friend without my consent. Second, I have a complete report on corporate fraud at Garrick Harrison's firm. I need to know the best way to use it as an anonymous tip. There was a short pause on the line. Then I heard a low, dark sound that might have been a chuckle. Well, Celine, Anya said, her voice suddenly rich with interest. This sounds like a productive Tuesday. Send me everything. I sat there for an hour, the screen of my phone dark. Then it lit up. A text message. My heart didn't jump. It just sank, heavy and cold. The name on the screen was Zelda. My best friend. My sister. My surrogate. A wave of nausea hit me, so powerful I had to grip the edge of my desk. I opened the message. Hey girlie, need a money/petty stat. You free? I stared at the words, at the little pink nailed emoji. She was 4 weeks pregnant with my stolen child, a child bought with my money, and she was asking me to get manicures. The casual cruelty of it, the absolute audacity, was breathtaking. She wasn't just a betrayer, she was a sociopath. She was probably sitting with Garrick right now, laughing, wondering when the boring, barren Celine would finally notice. She didn't see me as a threat. She saw me as a fool. My hands didn't shake as I typed my reply, my words as cold and bland as I could make them. So sorry, buried in a deadline. Rain check. Her reply came back almost instantly. Ugh, fine. You're no fun. I looked at her words. You're no fun. I dropped the phone on the desk. You're right, I whispered to the empty room. I'm not. Not anymore. The next 48 hours were a blur of cold, focused rage. I didn't sleep. I barely ate. I lived on black coffee and the sharp, metallic taste of revenge. I was a ghost in my own house, my laptop my only companion. I launched what Anya called Operation Financial Tsunami. First, I moved my money. Every penny of my book advances, every royalty check from my foreign sales, and the inheritance my grandmother had left me. It all went into new, unlinked accounts at a bank Garrick didn't even know I used. I left just enough in our joint accounts to look normal, to not raise any red flags. Then, I became a different kind of novelist. I researched. I spent hours on the phone, posing as a potential new client for LifeTech's competitors. I asked for copies of their contracts, their consent forms. I consulted with them, my voice full of fake hope, all while I was studying their breach of protocol clauses, their negligence fine print. I was building Anya's case for her. I was sharpening the blade. Every click of the mouse, every transfer I made, felt like a small victory, a reclaiming of my power. Garrick thought he was stealing my future. He had no idea I was systematically dismantling his past, his present, and every second of the future he thought he deserved. My phone rang as the sun was coming up on the third day. It was Anya. Her voice was no longer amused. It was hard, like iron. Celine, I'm glad I'm sitting down, because what I just found is staggering. It's worse than we thought. My blood, already cold, turned to ice. What is it? I asked. The clinic is trying to cover its tracks, she said. They sent over the paperwork. Garrick did file the consent forms to release the embryo to a surrogate. My heart stopped. But I never signed that. I know, Anya said, her voice grim. He filed a consent to release form. With your signature. I couldn't breathe. Anya, I whispered, my mind racing. I never signed that. He forged it. He must have. I knew instantly how he'd done it. Check the metadata on the digital file, I said, my voice shaking with a new kind of fury. I bet he scanned my signature from our mortgage. He knew I'd never look. He knew I trusted him. There was a sharp intake of breath on Anya's end. Celine, he didn't just betray you. He committed multiple felonies. This isn't a divorce. This is a criminal case. He came home late that night, just as I knew he would. I didn't bother turning on the lights. I was sitting in his favorite armchair in the living room, a shadow in the dark. He fumbled for the light switch, sighing. Celine, you scared me. Why are you sitting in the dark? He sounded tired, annoyed, like I was the inconvenience. He flicked on the lamp, and his face was a mask of casual concern. You okay, babe? You've been so quiet. I didn't move. I just looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time. The man I loved was gone. A stranger was wearing his face. We need to talk, Garrick, I said, my voice flat. He started to lie, to deflect. Babe, I'm exhausted. I had a monster day at work. Can it wait? No, I said. My voice cut through the quiet of the room. I stood up slowly. I got an email from Life Tech. His face didn't just pale, it froze. I know about Zelda. He flinched, a tiny, almost invisible movement. I know about the $50,000. He took a step back, his eyes widening. And I know, I said, taking a step toward him, that you forged my signature. The silence was absolute. His mask of the loving husband didn't just crack. It shattered, falling away to reveal the monster beneath. He didn't deny it. He didn't even try. He just changed. The charming, worried husband was gone, and in his place was a sneering, angry stranger. He threw his briefcase on the floor and laughed, a short, ugly bark that echoed in the silent house. You're right, he snarled, his voice dripping with a venom I had never heard. I did it. And you know what? I'm not sorry. He started pacing, energized by his own cruelty, finally able to unleash the truth. I wanted a family, Celine. A real one. Not a part-time project you schedule between book tours and writers' conferences. I'm tired of being second place to your characters. I just stood there, letting him talk, letting him dig his own grave. I'm tired of a barren, career-obsessed ice queen who's more in love with her own head than her husband. Zelda is a real woman. She's warm. She's supportive. She knows what a man actually needs. He was shouting now, his face red. And that baby, the one you couldn't carry, it's mine. And I'm going to raise it with a real mother. He was so arrogant, so blissfully stupid. He thought he was winning an argument. He had no idea he was delivering a full confession to a crime in front of the only witness who mattered. I watched him, my heart a frozen stone in my chest, as he processed his confession. He was still red-faced, still breathing hard, triumphant. He thought he had won. He thought he had finally broken me. I just stared at him. Then I spoke, and my voice was a whisper, but it cut through his rage like a knife. Get out. He laughed again, that same ugly barking sound. Get out? This is my house, Celine. You're delusional. Where are you going to go? Huh? Back to one of your fantasy worlds? I'm not going anywhere. He crossed his arms, defiant, a king in his castle. I almost smiled. No, Garrick, I said, walking slowly to my desk and picking up a single, folded document. This isn't your house. It was bought with the inheritance my grandmother left me. And 2 months ago, you signed a document. You thought it was for a tax reassessment that moved this property and only this property into the Celine Rostova Living Trust. His sneer faltered. His face went blank. You what? It's my house, Garrick. It has always been my house. You have been a guest here. And right now, I said, looking at my watch, you are trespassing. You have 10 minutes to collect your immediate belongings. After that, I am calling the police and reporting a break-in. He left. He actually left, stumbling out the door with a duffel bag, his face a mask of shocked, white fury. The silence he left behind was heavy but clean. The next morning, I got a call from Anya. Her voice was electric. The papers were served, Celine. $50 million. Dropped right on the CEO's desk at 9:01 a.m. I sat down, a cup of coffee halfway to my lips, and I asked, and she said, savoring the word, they are in absolute pants on fire panic. This isn't just a lawsuit. It's a public relations nuclear bomb. Their lawyers called me back within an hour. They are terrified you'll go to the press. I listened, my mind working. This was the first real crack in their fortress. They offered a settlement, Celine. Anya continued, her voice cautious. 7 figures. Right now. Sign an NDA and this all goes away. I actually laughed, a dry, humorless sound. An NDA. They thought this was about money. They thought I could be bought off, silenced, just like they assumed Garrett could forge my name without consequence. No, I said, my voice hard. Tell them I refuse. I don't want their silence. I want a public deposition. I want their CEO and the doctor who signed off on this to answer my questions under oath on the record. My next move couldn't be made from my house. It couldn't be traced to my laptop or my IP address. This one had to be a ghost. I drove downtown to the main branch of the public library. I hadn't been there in years. I sat at a public terminal, the smell of old paper and floor wax filling the air. It felt, ironically, like a scene from one of my own spy novels. I logged into a new, anonymous email account I'd created just for this purpose. I took a deep breath and uploaded the entire Project G folder. The spreadsheets tracking the stolen money, the scan statements from the hidden accounts, the registration documents for the 2 shell companies he'd funneled the cash through. I put 3 email addresses in the tip field. Garrick's CFO, his CEO, and the lead board member, a man I'd researched and found to be obsessed with his legacy and corporate ethics. I typed a simple subject line, an ounce of prevention Garrick Harrison's consulting fees. The body of the email was just one line. He's been stealing from you for 18 months. The proof is attached. Do with this what you will. I hit send. The second bomb was in the air. 2 weeks passed. 2 weeks of agonizing silence. I knew from Anya that the clinic was scrambling, trying to find a way to discredit me. I knew from my silent house that Garrick and Zelda were, for now, lying low. I tried to write, but the words wouldn't come. Then, one afternoon, my phone buzzed. A notification from Instagram. My stomach twisted. Zelda had tagged me. Tagged me? My fingers felt like lead as I opened the app. And there it was. My world tilted. It was a picture of an ultrasound. My ultrasound. The one from my 12-week checkup, the last one I'd had. Except it wasn't my hand holding it. It was Zelda's. She had a new, gaudy diamond ring on her finger. In the photo, Garrick was standing behind her, kissing her temple. They looked so happy. And the caption was the final twist of the knife. The secret is out. My soulmate Garrick and I are starting our miracle family. It's been a hard journey, but we are so #blessed, #new beginnings. She tagged me in front of her 500,000 followers. She didn't just want me to see it. She wanted the world to see that she had won. She wanted to humiliate me. I stared at the post. I stared at the fawning comments already pouring in. Congrats, Queen. So happy for you. You deserve this. What a beautiful story. My blood, which had been so cold for 2 weeks, began to boil. The rage was so hot it was almost sweet. She thought she was safe. She thought I was a silent, defeated victim. She thought she could steal my child, my husband, and my money, and then brag about it. She had no idea what she'd just done. She hadn't just posted a picture. She had handed me the microphone and a global audience. My fingers moved, my nails clicking on the glass. I wasn't Celine the novelist. I was a woman pushed too far. I scrolled down and tapped the comment button. Congratulations on your new beginning, Zelda. I typed, my hand perfectly steady. Just a small correction. That miracle isn't yours. It's my frozen embryo, which you and Garrick stole from LifeTech Fertility after he forged my signature on the consent forms. You didn't start a journey. You committed a felony. My lawyers will be in touch. So will the clinics. And the police. I hit post. Then I turned off my phone. I didn't turn my phone back on for 12 hours. When I finally did, it was almost unusable. It was a solid, vibrating brick of notifications. My comment hadn't just gone viral. It had gone nuclear. It was screenshotted, shared, and plastered over every gossip blog, every influencer drama channel, and was already trending on Twitter. Zelda's carefully crafted world of pastel colors and hashtag blessed affirmations was on fire. I scrolled, watching the digital inferno with a cold, detached fascination. Embryo stealer. This is the most vile thing I have ever read. Her soulmate forged his wife's signature. Cancel her. Now. The comments on her ultrasound picture had turned from fawning praise to pure, unadulterated rage. Her sponsors, the little boutique brands that paid her to post, were in a full-blown panic. One by one, I watched them post public statements. We are horrified. We are terminating our relationship with Zelda Vincent, effective immediately. We do not condone this. By midnight, her agent had dropped her. By the next morning, her entire Instagram, her blog, her whole identity was gone. Deleted. She had been erased from the digital world she loved more than anything. 2 days later, the second bomb detonated. Anya called me while I was making coffee. Good morning, Celine. Are you watching the business news? I turned on the small TV in my kitchen. Garrick's firm had just issued a press release. An internal audit has revealed significant financial irregularities, a stone-faced CEO read from a prompter. We have terminated the employment of finance manager Garrick Harrison, and a criminal investigation is pending. I imagine the scene Anya later described to me. Garrick, walking into his office, probably still arrogant from his victory at home. The CFO and 2 board members he barely knew, waiting for him. No pleasantries, just a cold, hard, Garrick, we need to talk about Apex Consulting. I pictured his face, his charm failing, his excuses turning to dust as they slid a copy of my spreadsheet across the table. He wasn't just fired. He was escorted out by security, his box of belongings carried behind him. He had thought he was a master of the universe. He'd forgotten that in the corporate world, there is no loyalty, only liability. And he had just become the biggest liability of all. The clinic, it turned out, was not taking its public humiliation well. Anya called me again, and for the first time, I heard genuine shock in her voice. Celine, you are not going to believe this. I sat down. What now? The clinic's lawyers, she said, are furious. Not just at you, but at Garrick. He didn't just forge your signature. He lied to them. He exposed them to this entire nightmare. Their reputation is in shreds. I listened, my mind piecing it together. So what are they doing? I asked. They're pivoting, Anya said, a slow smile in her voice. They just filed their own civil suit against Garrick Harrison for fraud, forgery, and catastrophic reputational damages. They're painting themselves as his victim. They publicly suspended the doctor who oversaw the transfer and are throwing Garrick to the wolves to save themselves. I was stunned. I had gone to war with 2 people, and now one of my enemies was suing the other. The web wasn't just tangled, it was collapsing in on itself, with Garrick and Zelda trapped right in the middle. The weeks that followed were a quiet, suffocating nightmare for them. Garrick was now being sued by me for $50 million. He was also being sued by the multi-million-dollar fertility clinic. He was jobless, his name a toxic poison in the financial world. He couldn't even get an interview. Zelda, the blessed influencer, was a public pariah. She had no income, no sponsors, and no friends. They were trapped together in the soulless, rented condo they'd chosen for their new beginning. I pictured them there, the silence thick with blame and terror. The money was gone, frozen by court order. The miracle baby, the reason for their grand betrayal, was no longer a symbol of their love. It was a ticking time bomb. It was the living, breathing evidence of their crime. Their perfect future had become a shared prison cell, and the bars were made of their own greed and lies. They had wanted a new life, and now they had one. The deposition was not in a grand courtroom, but in a sterile, beige conference room. I was there, sitting in the back corner with Anya, silent. I was a spectator at the execution of my own husband's life. Garrick sat at the long table, his expensive suit looking ill-fitting, his face pale and slick with sweat. Zelda was not there. The clinic's lawyers, 3 sharp-suited men who looked like they ate nails for breakfast, were ruthless. They didn't care about the betrayal. They cared about the lie. Mr. Harrison, one of them started, "Is this your signature on this document authorizing the transfer?" Yes, Garrick stammered. "And is this also your signature? Will you attest that you have the full, signed consent of your wife, Celine Harrison?" Garrick looked at me, just once, his eyes pleading. I stared back, my face a mask of stone. "Mr. Harrison," the lawyer pressed. I thought she would be okay with it." "That is not the question," the lawyer snapped. "Did you, or did you not, forge your wife's signature on this consent form?" The room was silent. Under oath, under penalty of perjury, his charm was useless. He had nowhere to run. "Yes," he whispered. "Yes." The clinic's lawyer had just sat down, looking satisfied, when Garrick, cornered and desperate, lunged forward in his chair. He looked like a trapped animal. "But they were ours," he yelled, his voice cracking. "The embryos, they were marital property. This is a divorce issue, not this." The clinic's lawyers looked annoyed, but Anya, my lawyer, who had been silent in the corner, finally spoke. Her voice was quiet, but it sliced through the room. "Mr. Harrison," she said, tapping a thick stack of papers she'd brought, "weren't you declared financially insolvent in 2018, just before your marriage, after your first tech startup failed?" Garrick froze, his face turning a blotchy red. That has nothing to do with this." "Oh, but it does," Anya continued, her voice silky smooth. "Isn't it true that every single dollar for the IVF treatments, the medication, and the storage fees for those embryos for 5 straight years was paid exclusively from Celine's personal royalty accounts and her premarital savings?" She slid a bank statement across the table. "You didn't pay for any of it. You had no assets to contribute. The assets you stole, Mr. Harrison, weren't even marital property. They were hers, and you forged her name to steal them." The room was dead silent. He hadn't just stolen my future. He'd stolen my property. That deposition broke them. The clinic was hemorrhaging money on the stock market and, worse, public trust. Anya called me 2 days later, and her voice was a weapon. "They're done," she said. "They're terrified you'll release the deposition transcript. They want to settle, and they want to settle now." The first offer, the one I had refused, looked like pocket change. They didn't offer 7 figures this time. They offered 8, a staggering amount of money that made my head spin. But I didn't care about the check. I cared about the terms. "I'll accept," I told Anya, my voice cold and clear, on 2 conditions. First, I don't want an NDA. I want a full public apology. Anya paused. "Celine, they'll never agree to that." "They will," I said. "And second, the apology must specifically condemn the fraudulent, criminal actions of Garrick Harrison. By name." Anya was silent for a beat. Then she let out a short, sharp laugh. "You're ruthless. I love it." 3 days later, Life Tech Fertility issued a press release. They deeply regretted the catastrophic breach of trust and announced new security protocols. And then, the most beautiful sentence I had ever read: "We condemn the fraudulent, criminal actions of Mr. Harrison, who preyed upon both his wife and this institution." My divorce was the last piece of the puzzle. The courtroom was small and quiet. Garrick was there, but he looked like a ghost. His expensive suit was gone, replaced by a cheap, wrinkled one he'd probably bought at a discount store. He had a public defender. Zelda was nowhere to be seen. The proceedings were fast. My trust, my premarital assets, my book royalties. Anya had built an iron wall around everything. He had no claim to my house. He had no claim to my business. The judge was about to finalize it, his pen hovering over the paper, when Garrick, looking pale and desperate, suddenly stood up. "Wait," he croaked. The whole room looked at him. "What about the settlement?" The judge looked confused. "What settlement?" "The one from the clinic," Garrick said, his voice rising with a wild, desperate hope. "She got millions. That's marital property. I'm entitled to half." The judge stared at him. The public defender put his head in his hands. Even the bailiff looked embarrassed for him. The judge finally let out a short, sharp laugh. "Mr. Harrison," he said, "you are the perpetrator of the fraud that led to that settlement. You are the reason she was paid. You are not entitled to profit from your own crime. To even ask is an insult to this court. Sit down. The gavel fell. Divorce finalized. I stood up and I walked out. I was free. A year is a long time. I spent it healing. I spent it writing the best book of my career. I didn't seek out news of them, but it found me anyway. The corporate fraud case against Garrett was simple. My Project G dossier was a perfect, self-contained map of his crimes. He pleaded guilty to embezzlement and was sentenced to 3 years in a low-security federal prison. His name was a warning in the financial papers, a story of greed and stupidity. And Zelda? Her story was quieter, but just as devastating. She'd had the baby, a little boy, I heard. My heart ached for him, the only true, innocent victim in this entire nightmare. But the clinic, in its desperate attempt to look tough and regain public trust, had not forgotten her. Their civil suit against both Garrick and Zelda moved forward. They were sued for millions in damages. They had no money, no jobs, no assets. They were forced to declare bankruptcy. The last I heard, from a gossiping town acquaintance, Zelda was living with her parents. She'd lost the condo, lost her career, and was working shifts at a 24-hour gas station to pay for diapers. They hadn't just lost my money. They had lost everything. I stood on a small stage, a podium in front of me, a dozen cameras flashing. I wasn't in a courtroom. I wasn't in my dark, quiet office. I was in the light. My new book was a bestseller, but that wasn't why they were here. Thank you all for coming, I said, my voice clear and strong. A year ago, I was the victim of a crime I didn't even know existed. My trust was broken in the most unimaginable way. But my story, I learned, is not unique. It's just one of the few that has come to light. I looked out at the faces, the reporters, the other women who had written to me with their own stories of clinic mistakes and lost hope. What happened to me was a nightmare, I said. But the settlement from that nightmare has given me a new purpose. Today, I am officially launching the Celine Foundation. We will provide legal aid, financial support, and advocacy for victims of fertility fraud and negligence. My quiet strength was quiet no longer. It was a headline. I hadn't just won my case. I had taken my pain and built a shield for others. I didn't just get justice. I rewrote the rules.